A word or two about the contemporary pieces in this concert before we turn to the main items. Aaron J. Kernis's Musica Celestis, celestial music, heavenly music. That's quite a claim, isn't it? I can tell you it really is. Aaron J. Kernis is one of those contemporary composers who's gone back to the tonal, romantic roots of so much classical repertoire and rediscovered them. Not in a jarring or disturbing kind of way. This is a piece of music that just does what it says. It's gorgeous. You might hear hints of the prelude to Wagner's Lohengrin that the orchestra played quite recently. You might also hear echoes of Vaughan Williams's famous and beautiful Fantasia on the theme of Thomas Tallis. But Aaron J. Kernis has turned this into something so completely personal that actually it's, well, I was absolutely enwrapped by it. I put it on and thought, well, I haven't listened before I did this video. And I just sat there thinking, oh, that was gorgeous. Have I got time to listen to it again? No. So I'll probably be doing it after this recording. It was lovely. And by a lovely piece of, well-programmed design, Katherine Balch is actually one of Aaron J. Kernis's pupils. She's admitted she owed a lot to him. And if you listen carefully, you'll probably hear that she too, like Kernis, has discovered a beautifully fresh way of reinventing the sounds of tonal classical music, romantic music. Her piece is called Like a Broken Clock. It was inspired partly by a pop song and partly by hearing a little cuckoo clock that just about managed to strike the hour, but sounded very frail and fragile. And you can hear that throughout the music. You can hear the clock theme, as it were, redeveloped, but the ticking changes. It morphs into all sorts of things. And this lovely little orchestral miniature manages to be very entertaining and actually rather beautiful and thought-provoking at the same time. Well, between those two comes one of the absolute Everests of the piano concerto repertoire, Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1. It has one of the most famous tunes in all classical music. And even if you think you don't know it, you probably do. It's stunning. It's one of those things that just makes you go, wow, the moment the concerto begins. Interestingly enough, though, Tchaikovsky never brings it back. He develops it a bit at the beginning of the concerto, and then the scene changes and we're off, as it were, almost into a new concerto. But don't bother about that, because this concerto just goes on being full of wonderful dramatic inspiration and fabulous tunes. Tchaikovsky is one of the great melody writers of all time. And he has that Russian ability, that very typical Russian ability, to create tunes that are very long. You take a very deep breath and, as it were, sing for minutes, whole minutes sometimes. And having been to Russia quite a few times and got a sense of just how big it is, that country, I do feel that somehow or other this hugeness and longiness of a lot of Russian melodies kind of goes with the territory, literally. You know, if you lived in a place like that, you'd want to sing big tunes to sing up the space. And that's very much the way the music works. It's fabulously well written for the piano as well. It's very difficult, but it's great to play if you can master it. That's one of the reasons I think why pianists love it so much. So strange to relate that it was a bit of a disaster at its first performance, and Tchaikovsky eventually ended up rewriting parts of it. I think he was right to do. Sometimes these experiences may be cruel for composers, but they can teach you something, and the revisions that come out of them are very, very important. But, well, it just is one of the most compelling, exciting, moving, stirring concertos in the repertory. And I think a reminder why, in times like this, when there are all sorts of reasons to be anxious about things coming out of Russia, that good things have come out of that country too. And in answer to the question, should we be performing Russian music? Well, if it's music like this, I think the answer is yes. Finally, Robert Schumann's Symphony No. 3. Schumann was very, very prone to extreme mood swings. To what extent this was as a consequence of the syphilis he probably contracted when he was younger, and to what extent it was a result of almost certainly the bipolar condition that he'd inherited, is difficult to describe. But the Third Symphony is a product of one of the most joyous periods of his life. In the late 1840s, he'd slightly nervously taken on a position as conductor of the orchestra in Düsseldorf. He was right to be nervous because it turns out that the Düsseldorf orchestra wasn't that good, and Schumann himself wasn't that great a conductor, and the combination of the two of them together really didn't work. 1849, just before he took up the appointment, he decided he'd have a little exploratory tour of the Rhinelands, and particularly from Düsseldorf down to the great city of Cologne, which stands on the Rhine. And he was absolutely thrilled by what he saw there. He loved the folk music, he loved the culture, he enjoyed the food and the wine, and was absolutely fascinated and riveted by the work that had been done on the cathedral, started in the medieval age, but not finished until the 1840s. And he was there for the enthronement, the service of the enthronement of the cardinal, the new cardinal of Cologne. The first movement, you can hear the tremendously powerful current of the River Rhine sweeping along. The second movement, it's a folk dance music, but I think it's a rowing song because there's a very big emphatic whoom on the first beat, which is very much the kind of tune you'd sing to keep up your energy as you're rowing on the river. A beautiful watery portrait, pastoral watery portrait in the third movement. Then comes the portrait of the interior of the cathedral, the solemn rite. Then the finale is like stepping out of the darkness of the cathedral into the bright lights of a bustling city. And the finale is amazing. It just goes on getting faster and faster and more exhilarated until the end. Schumann would experience a great deal of mental agony in the years to come. But at this stage, he sounds as if he's really enjoying life. And that's why Schumann's Third Symphony is such a pleasure to listen to.